So if you're like me, you may have been using AI to create branding mockups, a bit of art direction, and it's amazing what you're able to produce. But if you're using this in mid-2026, it's likely you've run into the same limitation I have, which is where for text-heavy logos, AI seems programmed to re-render them, often getting the details wrong. Even if you explicitly ask it to leave the logo untouched, it seems to keep doing this. So I'm hoping one day this gets fixed and this video becomes completely redundant. But in the meantime, here's a workaround that I've found to be a lifesaver. It only takes a few minutes and it involves using Photoshop, a gradient map for more complex scenarios, and a simple transform and distort for the easier ones. So I'm using Claude as an art director to really spell out what I want clearly. This is the logo I've uploaded, so you can see it's predominantly text. And as I scroll down, these are the results. So that looks great. That's exactly what I'm looking for, except it's not my logo. It's automatically tried to reconstruct it. Even though I've implicitly said treat the uploaded PNG as a flat image file, do not attempt to render, recreate, reinterpret, etc. This also currently happens in ChatGPT. So again, nice result, but not the logo. So the workaround, and if you're trying to do something like this where there's warped fabric, you can see AI has tried to create that warping. That is the effect we're looking for. So I'm going to show you how to achieve the same in Photoshop in just a few minutes. And so the process begins by following up with a prompt asking it to remove the logo. So we're going to download just the underlying fabric. That's what we want to work with. And then across in Photoshop, open your fabric. We'll just get rid of that watermark. That's going to bother me. And the result, if you just drop the logo PNG in, let's do this kind of size, it's not really part of the scene. And you could see AI had the right idea. It was trying to create a bit of a warp so it felt more realistic. So this is the technique for doing this inside Photoshop. So the first thing we're going to do is hide the logo from that top layer and then drag and drop onto the new icon to duplicate the layer with your fabric. We then want to desaturate it, so that's Control or Command and U. Drag the saturation slider right down to 0, minus 100. Next, go to Filter, Blur, and we want to apply a Gaussian blur of about, depends on the size of your image, about 5 pixels, maybe 4 pixels is looking good. This ensures it's going to pick up on the broad folds and not the little micro textures in the image. Then we need to save this layer on its own as a PSD file. So save as, and let's call it gradient map. Then save the working version as a different PSD file. Toggle your logo back on. Delete the layer you blurred and grayscaled. Select the layer with our logo and change the blend mode to screen. And reduce the opacity ever so slightly. So maybe 90%. That lets just a little bit of the fabric texture show through. Ensuring it's selected, go to Filter, Distort, and Displace. Keep the default options, which hopefully you can see large enough on screen. It's 10, 10, stretch to fit, and repeat edge pixels. Hit OK, and select the gradient map you saved earlier. And just like that, you can see subtly but effectively your logo is now imposed and it's following the curvature of a fabric using that gradient map. So that's the effect we wanted to achieve in the first place, but we've actually done it with our logo. Now the positioning, let's say you wanted it to position it something like this, so just the bottom edge is warping. To achieve that, we can't just move our logo. You have to go back a few steps in the process. So just hit Ctrl Z to undo, Command or Ctrl T to free transform, and use the rotate handle to maneuver this roughly into place. So I'm thinking something around there. And then repeat the process from earlier. So with the layer selected, filter, distort, displace. Select the gradient map. And there we've done it. And that warps quite nicely. So that really was the intended final effect. Once you get fast at this, it takes you a minute or two. So until they come up with a fix, until you can really lock a logo not being reproduced, and you have to admit it's done a fair job with the fonts and the spacing, but it's missed an entire word of the logo. So it's in quite a bad state at the moment. This is the technique I'm using to kind of get the end result I'm looking for. So I hope this was useful. I hope it saves you some of the headache I've been experiencing, and let's hope they update this in future.